How would you describe Singapore in one word?
Wow.
Okay, quite a spread over here. Nice, yeah, dig straight into it.
It's not bad at all.
Nice, and yeah, with your eating with the hands, I love it.
So this is sauce, or what
Yeah,
is that?
yeah. So this is roti prata. It's like a flaky flatbread, typically eaten with curry. Some people like it with sugar, but I personally think it's a bit of an abomination with sugar, and it's meant to be eaten with curry. The satay, we ordered that before from the uncle, so that's skewered meat. Over there, that's called carrot cake. This one's made with like a white radish and eggs, and it's savory.
It looked like meat when we first saw it.
Yeah, but it's not. It's
No.
yeah, it's a vegetable. Okay, over here we have fishbowl soup. So this is meant to be a bit healthier. It's made with less oil than the rest of the stuff. And of course, chicken rice. Have you had this before?
No.
And it's either served with steamed or roasted chickens, but you've got both. And then what you got there, that's lime juice. So what are your first impressions of this hawker center?
Pretty
You've never
nice.
been to one before.
This is a typical night.
Yeah, on a weeknight, it might be. Typically there isn't massive crowds just standing around watching one person eat. But yes, it would be a pretty typical night. So, because it's near to the city, a lot of people might come from their office jobs. They might get a meal here after work and then head back home. There's also a bunch of tourists around.
And the price is pretty reasonable.
For the city area, I would say, yeah, not too bad. Yeah. Obviously, if you go out to like the really local places, then you start to get a bit cheaper. But we paid $13 for that plate of.
Wow. That's a good
satay.
deal.
So I think, yeah, pretty reasonable. I know that it's the 25th anniversary of the Gates Foundation. Congratulations on that. What are some of the highlights looking back at the past 25 years?
Well, the big area that succeeded beyond our expectation is the work to help children to survive a lot of diseases. In a poor country, a lot of the deaths are children, sadly. And so it used to be globally about 10% of kids would die before the age of 5.
Yeah.
Now we have that down to about 5%. What we did is we got the vaccines to be cheaper.
Yeah.
Some of those are made in India, some in Indonesia, so we brought the price down, and we made sure that all the children in the world get like a diarrheal vaccine called rotavirus, respiratory vaccine called pneumococcus. And so, cutting that in half, that's our biggest achievement.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. If I had to ask you to look forward to the next 25 years, what are you most excited about? What do you hope to achieve in the next 25 years?
There's a lot of diseases like measles and malaria that we'd like to just get rid of completely. Polio, we need another 4 or 5 years to get that one away because it used to paralyze hundreds of thousands of children every year.
Yeah.
And then when we succeed with that, we'll go after some other diseases. We're beginning to understand why kids are malnourished,
Okay.
That neither their brain or their body develops, and that's a big tragedy.
Yeah.
In some countries, it's as many as 40% of the kids, and so they can't ever really learn and contribute the way they should.
Yeah. Yeah.
HIV has been particularly bad in Africa. We still have TB everywhere,
Yeah.
so we'll do our best to get that down. I think we can cut the childhood deaths from where we are today in half again, so say 2.5 million.
I've seen you described as like a optimistic person by nature. Is that accurate?
Oh yeah, no, I'm naturally optimistic, but even I didn't expect that we'd be saving 5 million lives every year. And that's a pretty crazy thing if you think of each parent. If I told you, hey, here's a kid, I saved his life, or here's 5, or here's 500,
Yeah.
This isn't 500 or 5,000 or 50,000, this is 5 million. Pretty wild.
Yeah. Obviously, we've got quite a spread of food over here. I understand that affordable, nutritious food is really important to the mission of the Gates Foundation. Can you tell us why that's so?
If you're very poor in a rural area, your diet is very limited.
Okay.
You may have like a cereal crop and a bean crop,
Yeah.
but very little protein, milk, eggs, meat. That's not the only problem, but a lot of kids, they're malnourished because of that lack of protein. Now, protein can be very expensive. There's a few things like soybeans that have some protein in them, but
Yeah.
mostly we improve the chickens in a country so they lay bigger eggs and more eggs.
Okay.
That's been very successful. We try and make the cows more productive so the cost of the milk goes down a lot.
Yeah.
And we help the farmers with better seeds. I didn't know much about agriculture when we got started, but I learned, the very poor people in the world, a lot of them are farmers. And so
Yeah.
you have to help them be more productive
Yeah.
in order to lift them up, particularly the women.
I've been reading source code quite a bit.
Oh, thank you.
And the thing with food for me is it's always tied to like memories, I think. And I can remember certain meals that my parents had. What is the one food item that you connect most closely with, your memories from your childhood?
My dad would barbecue,
Okay.
and he was very busy, so it was kind of nice that he might come home a little early and do that.
Yeah.
My mom made some pretty good spaghetti and meatloaf dishes.
Okay.
When you go to other people's houses, their meatloaf never tasted the same, so it's like, ooh, yeah, no,
Yeah.
we don't like this. You get used to your own
Recipe.
in that
mom's
case.
secret, yeah.
I've always been a big hamburger guy.
A hamburger guy?
Yeah, homemade or store-bought,
Do you cook much yourself?
I do not.
Okay.
I know how to heat soup, make coffee.
The
I can use a
basics.
microwave.
You could survive if you were left to your own devices.
Barely.
We saw earlier the digital payments. I wanted to ask you a bit about the digital public infrastructure and instant digital payments. How does that connect with the work that the Gates Foundation is doing with regard to financial inclusion?
To use a traditional bank account, the fees are very high and the minimal amount you can save. And so how do people save? It's very hard for them.
Yeah.
Maybe they try and buy gold or buy more cows. So the idea that it can be on their phone and digital, one of the things that's really enabled is if you have relatives in the city and they want to send money out into the rural areas, instead of some very high fee thing or trying to send cash, you just, now it's so obvious, everybody expects now that you can send money either zero or very, very small fee. And sometimes you'll have women's groups that work together and collect money collectively, microfinance. And now that that's being done digitally, it's a lot larger than when they had to do it with normal currency. Even getting money from other countries back to your homeland, you used to have to pay fees like 3 or 4%, and now that should be down more like 1%. So a huge improvement. Now, what we want to do is when you have that phone, it's actually helping to educate you about spending money. That, okay, when you sell your produce, maybe you should save to buy the seeds for next year or to buy the fertilizer for next year.
Yeah.
Or if you're careful, some loans, not all loans, but some loans make sense, like borrowing to buy more fertilizer if it'll really significantly improve your crop productivity.
Yeah.
And we want to lift that up because Africa and other parts of Asia, they have population growth, they have climate change, and only by innovating with the seeds and helping those farmers, including access to fertilizer, can we help them feed themselves.
Does Bill Gates still carry cash around with him?
I do not. I have, I go sometimes where there's a ballet. And so then I'm always careful. Oh, will there be a ballet? I have to take my cash. A few times I've had to borrow money from my friends. It's like, please, I hope I remembered to
pay them back.
Pay them back. But it's weird. The ballets do not have digital QR codes.
Well, here with those digital QR codes, I could generate one and you could send money to me. So you can do that within friends.
Really? Okay, that's cool that you can be almost like a merchant so easily for acceptance.
All right, while you've been here, you've visited with government leaders, tech entrepreneurs, other philanthropists. What has stood out to you about your visit to Singapore?
Well, Singapore is very forward-looking. The depth of knowledge, the technical capability of the government is very high. And so when we talk about how we want to help in this region with health and they need to do research, you've got top universities here. A lot of family offices for this region, are moving more and more to Singapore. And so as we're saying to those families, hey, consider, doing more philanthropy, and we'll work with you. Say it's a family from Indonesia. You know Indonesia, we don't.
Yeah.
But we know the diseases, and so we can work together. And so I met with philanthropists from Malaysia, from Indonesia, from Vietnam, a lot from Singapore itself. Thinking about the region, we've had great success on our work in India. We think we can learn additional things by engaging more deeply with these countries. So a lot of people, and a very positive story, quite a bit of economic growth.
Yeah.
So that the health expenditure has been going up, and Africa's probably the toughest place we work.
Okay.
In Asia, it'd be like Yemen or Afghanistan are tough. So
Okay.
a lot of solutions will start here and then move to the rest of the world.
So Singapore is a bit of a hub, I guess, for the region.
Exactly, yeah. So we don't do rich country healthcare. I mean,
Yeah.
that's very important. Some philanthropists do, but our health work is all to help those, who are most at risk of dying, the inequitable part of the health issue, which the market, sadly doesn't invest in malaria or malnutrition or even tuberculosis. We're by far the biggest funder of new drugs and diagnostics, even a vaccine for TB. I've created the Gates Foundation, which is about 1,800 people, and we have, the top TB, malaria, malnutrition people on our staff, because I saw there was no one doing that. And I like managing innovators, hiring innovators. So I couldn't take exactly what I knew from Microsoft, because it was health and it was in different countries. But I benefited from my Microsoft experience, and now said, okay, we're going to get childhood deaths down. Who can help me with that? So yes, it's a hands-on organization, although when we fund the research ourselves, but when it comes to delivery on the ground, of course, we're mostly working through the country primary healthcare system or through NGOs in the country. We don't have anybody handing out medicine. That's all through partners.
One last question before we have to go. How would you describe Singapore in one word?
It's well run. It's forward-looking, technocratic, crossroads, rational. I've gotten to meet, from Lee Kuan Yew through the entire history of the leadership here. I've gotten to meet with all the leaders, and it's amazing how, far Singapore has come.
Yeah.
And now, it's a chance to give back and help others. But I'd say it's a talented place. So maybe talented if you had to.
Okay, very nice.
It's hard.
We'll take that one, talented. I think that's really complimentary. Okay, before we go, in Singapore, when we eat at hawker centers like this, you have to return your plates.
Okay.
So there's a tray return over there. So we'll be getting you to do the Singapore tradition of returning your plates to the tray return over there. And you gotta place it up here to complete the meal.
Okay.
There you go, good job.
I don't want to make a mess.
Thank you so much for your time, Bill.
All right,
Really
that was fun.
appreciate
There's
it.
good food too.
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah.